2, 1. Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to another exciting episode of Delusions of Grandeur. I am one of your hosts, and today in the room, we welcome back Boris. Hello, Boris.
Hi, thank you.
And why don't you tell us a little bit about the film that we are going to be going on about?
Oh, well, tonight we're doing a movie that's a part of one of my favorite horror franchises. It's Omen IV: The Awakening. Now, this movie, which was directed by... you have it. Nice. I have one too as a part of my Omen box set, which I have probably shown before. Oh,
Yeah, mine's kind of beat up, but here's mine. It doesn't have the remake in it. This is the one before that. In fact, there was even one before that. So, and I know I have the Shout Factory one as well. So,
cool. So this was a movie directed by Jorge Montesi, and I'm not sure if I can pronounce this one correctly. Dominique Othenin-Girard.
And it reads to me like Jorge Montesi and Dominique Othenin-Girard.
Yeah, and written by Brian Taggart, Harvey Bernhard, and David Seltzer. And it stars Faye Grant as Karen York, Michael Woods as Gene York, and it says Michael Lerner, who plays Earl Knight, but he is not really one of the main characters. But we should mention the little girl playing Delia, whose name is, if I'm pronouncing it correctly, Asia Vieira. Again, I'm not sure if I pronounced that correctly.
It might be Asia Vieira.
Oh, maybe.
But just so you know, ladies and gentlemen, I do believe that this film was intended to be the first of many television sequels to 20th Century Fox's film history of popular titles. But this just so happened to be the last produced film by Harvey Bernhard, or Bernhard, however you want to say his name. But anyways, continue on.
Yeah, let's see what IMDb actually says about the story of this movie.
Okay,
it says,
I'm intrigued.
Davian Thorne is dead, but his prophecy is reborn in a mysterious girl named Delia, who is adopted by two attorneys, Jean and Karen York. When Karen realizes her baby was born under suspicious circumstances, she hires a private investigator to find Delia's real parents. A series of bizarre accidents occur, and Karen begins to suspect everyone of conspiring against her as she unravels the truth about her baby. So, Dave,
yes.
What were your first impressions of this movie? Was it the first time you saw it, or have you seen it before?
I think I've seen this before long time ago. It's just I didn't know that it was it. And I swear that myself and my fiance Tammy have watched the entire series at least once together because we like to marathon films. But this is the first time that I'm in my adult mind actually watching it and focusing on it, to be honest. And I really don't get all the backlash. It does have the Omen presence. I mean, it does have that Omen-esque like feel to it, and it does have that sense of doom and whatnot. It may not have it as strongly. I mean, it definitely has more bad seed ish type. It's more on the level of bad seed than it is Omen. But I don't have a lot of hate for this feature. I do think that the little girl Asia, who played Delia, definitely did play her the way that you would think that a problem child would. And she definitely came with her own troubles. I relatively enjoyed this film. It wasn't really all that. I mean, it wasn't really all that campy. I mean, it still had some of the desired effects of the Omen, mythos, and it definitely, from the negative views that this film gets, I don't get it. I mean, yes, it goes outside of the Omen by using a female child, but other than that, like, what gives? Is it the fact that they didn't want a woman involved? Were they sexist? I mean, that's the way I'm looking at it. Sexist, male chauvinist pigs, all of them, what do you have against having a woman child be the main source of things? At least until the real child comes along, So,
yeah, there's definitely nothing wrong with that. Although I think the reasons why people hated this movie were some other reasons. Although, as you said, I didn't think it was so bad either. Actually, if we take all the bad sides and the good sides, I would still say the movie is good. I actually enjoyed it. I think maybe the main reasons why people hate this movie is because the Omen series is supposed to be about this Christian war between God and the devil and so on. And in this story, they involved these healing crystals and stuff, which is from some other religion, not from Christianity. And
well,
there is
I do believe that they were poking fun at New Age religion with that type of religious help going on here in the film.
yeah. And there is also the fact that many plot points of this movie feel a bit recycled from the first one. There are many similarities between this story and the story of the first Omen movie. Like, in both stories, we have a case of adopting a child of mysterious origin, that there are two nannies, one of which kind of commits suicide, the other one being evil. Then we have a Rottweiler guarding the child, and we have a photographer doing research on people and so on. So maybe I think those were the reasons why some people hated this movie, but
Yeah, but what film doesn't try to recycle something from someone else? I mean, each film that's out there seems to be inspired by previous ones before. I mean, even Jaws inspired many films afterwards. I mean, it's it's very different when you come across an original idea. But the thing is, because many films had been done as a sequel before this. I think people were at the time kind of tired of the story, and I think even to this day we still have the same kind of people. Well, I'm tired of the same shit. Why can't they come up with something original? Why can't they? Why can't they? Man. Well, if you were so god awful angry at the fucking shit, why don't you go out and film one yourself and see if you can do it better?
I agree.
You know, I mean, to me, a lot of the hate towards this film are a bunch of fanboys who are so stuck in their fucking square boxes of only this is the only way that this film can be done. Yada 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 yada. There is no other way. I mean, no candle can be held to this film. Fucking bullshit. Anyways, but let's continue with this film. There is not enough that I can say about the hate of fanboys that I have.
Indeed. Well, I actually think, while some people may disagree, I think this movie, or at least some sequel to Omen III, The Final Conflict, was necessary because, as I mentioned in our previous Omen discussion, in the first movie it was said that the Antichrist had to be killed with all the 7 of those daggers at once, and in the third movie Damien was stabbed with only 1 dagger, and he said, Nazarene, you have won nothing. So that kind of clearly implies that the story is not over, that something has to happen after that.
And so that's not something that happens here. I mean, the daggers weren't even mentioned in here, were they?
No, they weren't.
Which doesn't exactly follow the mythos of the Omen thing. Maybe they should have had someone either related or of no one's of Buchenhagen's so-called prophecy of what he thinks, how he thinks that the Antichrist should be killed. None of that went over into this film, did it not?
Yeah, that's true. But I think since in the third movie Damien collected 6 of those daggers and he got killed with the 7th one, my theory is that his disciples got all the 7 of them and put them somewhere in a safe place where Damien's children couldn't get affected by them.
So why don't you tell us a little bit about the plot of this particular film?
Oh, indeed. So at the very beginning, we see these nuns from the orphanage making a phone call to Karen York, who, as we find out, she and her husband want to adopt a baby because she has been trying to get pregnant but couldn't.
And let me just stop you by saying that both of these people, this couple, are both attorneys.
Yeah.
Which I didn't realize that Karen was an attorney until I read like some of the description of this film. It was not necessarily something that was shouted out right away. I thought that Gene York was her husband.
Yeah, he was some sort of. Yes.
But it wasn't really publicized that Karen was, at least in the beginning of the story and throughout it.
Yeah, I think it was maybe mentioned once or twice, but not much importance was given to it. So yeah, Karen and Jean adopt a baby girl from this orphanage run by nuns. And after they take her, we see this nun, Sister Yvonne, being upset, like she has a bad feeling that something bad is about to happen, and she sees some eclipse that was a spontaneous eclipse which wasn't supposed to happen, and she thinks it's a bad omen, and she knows something about the origin of the baby girl. So she gets extremely concerned about that, and then we see her getting into an argument with this other nun, which I actually found that scene kind of strange because Sister Yvonne says that they did wrong by giving that child for adoption because she knows there were evil forces involved, but the other nun says that it was the only thing they could have done because otherwise it would mean well, I guess if they hadn't done that, they would have had to kill the child, and this other nun says that would be unacceptable because God would never approve of killing a baby under any circumstances. But then, for some reason, this nun who advocated against killing the baby, she somehow dies. So some mysterious causes, I guess heart attack or something. But it's if you know the Omen series, it's implied that she got killed by some evil otherworldly forces, which I don't see why it would happen to her since she was kind of on the child's side here. So what do you think about that?
As far as the nun is concerned,
Yeah, this first nun that died at the beginning.
oh, her. Well, she to me, as far as I understand, I do believe that she played the mother abbess of the covenant, which is why later we see someone else who becomes the mother of that said orphanage, which is Catholic in its upbringing. I believe that she knew more than she let on, and she knew the forces of evil that were about to be unleashed. She knew what that eclipse meant, and because she knew, and she realized it is why she had to die. And anyone who gets anywhere close to realizing what's going on, you know what's going to happen. They're going to die. And they have got to die because they got to keep the secrets, or at least take the secrets to their grave, and that's the thing, and that's somewhat of the theme throughout out the Omen thing on the damn rise to of the Antichrist and its power. If anyone gets in its way, or his way, to becoming the ultimate evil person, supposed to bring about the 10 nations, which is something that is mentioned later as well. It's like the beast rises, and it's the number of the beast.
Yeah.
666. Although I thought that was kind of strange that 666 showed up on the hand of the child instead of the back of the head, which is which is to me where the number of the beast was supposed to show up on the Antichrist. It wasn't supposed to show up on the hand. In those, in fact, in both Omen 1 and 2, you see some people going through some photo clips, like they're doing like a video clip thing on a projector.
Oh, yes.
I think they mentioned something, or Buchenhagen specifically says that the mark of the beast shows up on the back of the head. Normally, Normally
Oh,
in a shape of 666. You know.
actually, if I remember correctly, I think Bugenhagen said at first that the mark has to be somewhere on the child's body, and then Robert Thorne said, It's nowhere, I have baited him, I know every inch of him," and then Bugenhagen said, "Then it must be under his hair."
Okay, so
But
so it can be on the body somewhere else.
I think so. And the same Mark, this priest, Father Brennan, in the first movie, he also had that mark because he participated in Damien being brought into existence and being given for adoption to the Thorne family and so on. And I forgot where exactly the mark was found on his body after his death, but I think it wasn't under the hair. I think it was somewhere else.
Okay. I
Mm,
see. I thought that it only had to be on the back of the head, but maybe it can
but
be on other parts of the body. I don't
mm,
know.
maybe, but in a way, you also make a good point because that child had a mark on his hand. And how is it possible that Karen never noticed it on his hand until the very end of the movie?
Right? I mean,
Yeah,
don't you think a mother would know her own child?
indeed. Like,
Like backwards and forwards, like while she was holding him or whatnot. Do you think that she would have noticed that thing right, as soon as she brought him home or some shit, or even at the
yeah,
hospital?
yeah, yeah, like it was pretty much obvious on his hand. 666. She should have seen that.
Well, yeah. Suddenly, it chose that moment to show her the mark, you know.
Yeah.
But anyways, back to the plot line. So they take the child home, right?
Yes.
And what happens?
They introduce the baby to their friends and family and so on, and then Karen gets scratched in the cheek by baby Delia.
The butt cheek?
No! Oh my!
Sorry, I have to clarify.
Nice one. So yeah, she gets scratched, and they try to dismiss it as nothing to worry about, but she finds it strange that a baby's fingernail can be so sharp to make
Well,
such a.
especially since it looks like it was starting to have some kind of an infection when she went to the doctor. Uh, that helped. Well, her main doctor, I guess, which seems to have. It's strange that this doctor seems to be very familiar with her. You know.
Yeah, he was also there at their house when they were introducing the baby to everyone. I guess, like,
Yeah, I don't know a lot of doctors that make house calls these days.
yeah, well, I got the impression that he was their doctor, but also their family friend or something like that. Or at least he seemed to be a friend before we knew certain things.
Well, and the Yorks seem to be relatively rich, so to speak, or at least having some money because their home seems to have some relatively decent looking rooms, and plus Jean York seems to be on the rise to some political power. Um,
He,
Shortly. So why don't you tell us a little bit about how he got to that point?
Well, that's another thing that was kind of recycled from the first movie, where we had the whole subplot of Robert Thorne's political career. But yeah, this guy, he is trying to become a congressman, if I understood correctly. And what happened was there was this photographer who took photos of the current congressman in a compromising pose with a prostitute. And I guess those photos were published, which was organized by this man named Jake, who wanted to push Gene through and help him become a congressman because he was kind of manipulating Gene into doing things that were convenient for Jake's own political agenda, from what I understood. While Gene himself seemed a bit clueless about what was going on.
Yes, he did. In
Uh,
fact, Delia definitely became Daddy's little girl, didn't she?
yeah.
No, Daddy, you'll believe anything I say, won't you? I'm your daughter. I'm pretty. I am innocent no matter what you think. I'm just a little angel. You don't think I would do that kind of thing, would you, Daddy?
I love your impersonations.
But yeah, that's the kind of thing that I'm getting from Delia. No matter what she does, she can do no wrong in her daddy's eyes. Especially since by the end of the film, she's walking hand in hand with her daddy.
Mm, yeah, actually. Uh, okay, maybe we should mention that later since it kind of spoils the end of the movie. Although we are spoiling the movie anyway.
Yep. By now, these folks should know that we're going to spoil the shit out of this movie. So please go see it yourself. It's not as bad as previous delinquents have said, or whatnot. So I think you should at least give it a one-time watch. It's not so bad.
I agree.
But where are we? I think we're after. Okay, so what happens at school with Delia?
Hmm. Well, actually, I must say I have a bit of mixed feelings about that scene. She gets into a conflict with this boy named Jerome, and she is, well, okay, she is generally a villain in this story, but if we don't take other parts of the story into account here, I mean, I think it's
You
kind of
you could almost say that the bully deserves some of it.
right. Yeah, it was.
um, and from what I understand, he's done some things to her before this, and that at this point in time, I actually do think that she was telling the truth. I do think that most of it started from him, and I think she just took matters into her own hand and started to make trouble for him and trying to embarrass him. And then when his parents got involved, she made sure that they weren't an issue
Yeah.
because she was like, "It's okay, Daddy. They won't cause any more problems."
Yeah. Well, okay, what she did to that boy's father was a bit extreme.
Yeah, this wouldn't be an Omen film without at least a head chopping off. I mean, without heads rolling a little bit. This isn't quite an Omen film, so I think that was an homage to the Omen series, at least in a little bit. And I think that father kind of deserved it in a way.
Hmm. In a way, yeah, maybe not quite death, but he definitely deserved to be put in his place.
I,
I mean, yeah, uh, from what we understood, that boy did was the one who originally started to pick fights with Delia, and she was fighting back. And I think, okay, there are other scenes where she is clearly.
I think there are many parents like these parents who are very oblivious to the behaviors of their children at school, and when they're told that their child is a bully, they literally just stick up for them. Like my child does nothing wrong. My child is innocent. My child doesn't do that. My child doesn't it isn't capable of that. Yeah, you know, and yet bullying does happen, and unfortunately, uh, oftentimes the people parenting the children who are bullies are unaware of their child's behavior and often don't see it in front of them or whatnot. And it's just something about children or being a child. There's always someone smaller than you that might be just that easy to pick on, and it's hard. It's a rough world. I mean, the world gets crueler and crueler, and there are people just like that out there. And unfortunately, in this day and age, there's nothing you can do.
Mm, yeah, actually, this is not even the first movie or the first story in general where I hear about children being vilified for standing up against bullies. Like, you're not supposed to fight back, you're supposed to report it to the teacher, blah blah. Come on, why? If you are being treated like shit, you should fight back.
Eh, yes and no. It depends upon. Maybe when I was a kid, I would have said, "Hell yeah, let's fight." But in this day and age, with cops being able to do whatever the fuck they want, it it begs to differ what you can and can't do, and what is and what isn't allowed. But that's neither here nor there. This particular bully gets his in the end.
Yeah.
As it is, I think she forces him to come up some stairs that he's afraid of.
Uh, Indeed, and he pees himself, and all these other children see that and laugh at him.
Yes, yes. Now who's the bully? So, and Delia is somewhat kind of becomes the person who everyone fears in a sense. And then, of course, ultimately she gets, I think, thrown out of school, that school system, and she ends up being under the care of someone else. Who is that?
Hmm. Interesting. I didn't even notice that she was kicked out of school. I
Well,
see this movie.
it's just kind of assumed because then she's underneath the care of that one who gets thrown out the window.
Oh yeah, the babysitter, this woman named Josephine or Joe, as they call her in.
Yeah, well, she supposedly says that she works with children with problems.
Yeah, that's what she says.
So I kind of think that she is now kind of being homeschooled at this point in time.
Mm, Possibly. Yeah, I didn't think of it that way.
Especially since there was a playground equipment that she fell onto out the window. That kind of makes me feel like this was her home that Delia was in, and when her mother came to pick her up, that's why when she saw Delia swinging around on that circular contraption, it reminded her of the death of that woman.
Yeah.
But also, I think she kind of figured out that woman kind of figured out who Delia was, which is why she had to die.
Yeah, Delia told her something about her real father, where it was implied that her father was Satan, or actually Satan's son, as we find out later on.
Yeah, doesn't she say my father is your father?
Uh, yeah, which actually doesn't make sense. Damien is not that woman's father, but okay.
Yeah,
Uh,
which implied that maybe she was a Satan's disciple thing, you know.
yeah.
But ultimately, shortly after that, that's when Karen decided to go and what is it? She decided to go and hire an investigator. Correct? By the name of
Yes,
Knight, if I remember correctly.
indeed, which is the same man who took photos of that previous congressman. Uh,
And what do you think about that particular character?
Well, he was interesting. I kind of liked the scene when he took advantage of the moment when the nun was called to go outside to resolve something, and he was left alone in her office, and he used the moment to look through her files and find what he needed, what she apparently wasn't allowed to tell him, but he got this golden opportunity to find it for himself. That was kind of cool. And the hallucinations he had just before he died were rather interesting. Maybe one of the most visually impacting scenes in this movie.
Oh yeah. I thought that was very visual, where you saw the zombie baby Jesus in the manger scene.
Indeed.
But I also thought it was kind of interesting how he went and tracked down the nun, who evidently, after leaving the nunnery, she became a prostitute, and later she took up and created her own cult in a revival church, and how she ended up coming out and into a den of snakes, which they looked like vipers, you know. And when dude showed her, some pictures, she ended up getting bitten by the snake, and he bitten by the snake, and they both died the same day. That was kind of weird.
Yeah, although he didn't die from the snake bite, he got
No.
bitten just a little bit. She got bitten much more, and she died from it. He died a little bit later after he managed to make an impact on the main plot.
Well, and somehow out of all of this, a journal of some sort was sent to Karen through all of this, and which told her that the doctor was a part of the Satanist cult, and that's when we get this whole her killing him, and him telling her that she can't stop it all, and she literally just murders him in cold blood, and takes his gun and ends up back at the house, and all throughout this whole thing, Karen is trying to like let her husband know that she thinks something is wrong, that she thinks something is up, and even while she's pregnant with another child, you know, she as she's going into the emergency room, she's saying, "Delia tried to kill my child. Delia tried to do this," and it's like, what the hell? Hell, don't you love your wife? Don't you want to listen to her? And then finally, he tells the nurse that comes to take care of Delia, let me know if something odd comes up. Just don't tell my wife. It's like last minute, like, thinking of his wife's concern.
Mm, yeah, well, I guess throughout the movie he was thinking that I guess his wife was losing her mind or something, and at the very end, it was probably kind of confirmed for him after she took her own life, and that was probably when he was left even more convinced that everything that was happening was just in her own head, and that there was nothing wrong with Delia or with the baby.
Well, correct. So when she finally showed up at the house with the gun, and Delia was holding her son, and that's when you saw the mark of the 666 on his hand, and she was like, "Yeah, mommy, see him for who he really is." And it's kind of like that Dracula stare. Once you stare into it or her eyes, it's like you're done for. You can't really do anything, and she'll just probably make you kill yourself. You know. it's
Yeah.
it's that conscience that kind of kicks in where they have the strength to possibly pull off killing the bastard, but they're just that weak enough that they can be controlled, and that whatever weapon that they have in their hands can be turned around on them and used against them.
Mm, yeah, so at the end, when Karen is supposed to shoot the baby to death, she ends up shooting herself instead, and it's left up to interpretation whether she did it because she couldn't bring herself to kill a baby or because maybe Delia influenced her telepathically to kill herself instead of killing the baby. That's up to interpretation.
So, what did you think of Delia as a character?
Ooh, I must say I found her pretty interesting because there was a time before I even got so interested in the satanic theme in horror. I kind of liked these movies with scary children like The Ring, Silent Hill, Case 39. What else? The Good Son, The Orphan, and so on, which was actually what brought me to watching The Omen, the first movie, for the first time. Uh, so yeah, I found her pretty intriguing in that aspect. What about you?
I thought she was definitely a problem child, brought to the table. I mean, it's uh, the reason why I say it's kind of bad seedish is if you've ever heard of the bad seed, it's about like a teenage child who's just pure evil, and she just does things to hurt people, and it was the first movie that I remembered seeing in black and white, of a problem-esque child who is just, you cannot entirely believe her to be innocent, you know, and that's why I think this particular child is a little bit more bad seed and not a thorn. But that's okay. This was 1991. By this time, the Bad Seed and Omen were movies of stature, and I think that's kind of why they wrapped the two together. You know, and the Bad Seed came out way before the Omen. So
Yeah, well, Damien himself in the first movie was kind of like a bad scene thing as well, I guess.
in a sense, yeah, just with a political and biblical point instead of just a straight up evil child, you know. Uh,
Yeah, actually,
if if you had the Bad Seed and Damien get together and procreate, this is their love child, so to speak.
Yeah. Well, I guess it was implied that this woman, Kate Reynolds from the final conflict, that she was the one who gave birth to Delia after having sex with Damien before killing him. Although that wasn't directly mentioned here, but Kate Reynolds is mentioned in this book, Omen IV, Armageddon 2000, which is which is a book sequel to the final conflict, but it takes the story in a whole other direction from what they did in Omen IV, The Awakening. But I'll get into that later. I will want to.
Actually, you could probably bring it up now.
Okay. Well then, big spoiler alert. If you haven't read these two books, no, wrong book, damn it, sorry. These two books, Omen IV, Armageddon 2000, and Omen V, The Abomination, I will say some big spoilers about them now. One thing I would like to say is that many people who criticize this movie, Omen IV, The Awakening, as a bad sequel to the final conflict, they also praise this book, Omen IV, Armageddon 2000, saying things like this is how the story should have continued. But I must say, about what they say, I have some mixed feelings because I have read these two books, and okay, it's been a while since I read them. I don't remember every single detail exactly, but I will admit that the atmosphere of the books is much closer to The Omen than Omen IV, The Awakening. But then again, there are some things in the book that I didn't like the way they were done. I wish it was more like they did in the movie. For example, like I said, spoiler alert, if you ever want to read these books, maybe you should stop listening to me right now. Uh, in these books, we have a bit of a similar subplot, like Kate Reynolds was left pregnant in the aftermath of the final conflict, and we see her give birth to a child. And an interesting thing was done here because in the final conflict, we see Damien having anal sex with Kate Reynolds, and in this book, she actually gives birth through her butt. And that child that she gives birth to is the new Antichrist. And she, if I remember correctly, gets killed after that. So that's why we don't hear much from her anymore. But then,
So that's
yes,
why. So that's why the devil's an ass man.
apparently. Then, what is good about this book is that we get to see some characters from the previous stories. For example, this man, Paul Buer, who was a fairly relevant character in Davy and Omen 2, and he was briefly mentioned in the final conflict. He reappears in this story and he is fairly relevant here. And we also get to see Father Di Carlo, who was an important figure in the final conflict. He appears here. And we also see Nurse Lamont, the nurse in the final conflict who killed one of the newborns in the incubator. She reappears here, and some other characters. But there is one thing that I kind of didn't like about this story, that I much prefer how it was done in The Awakening in this movie that we are discussing now. It's how the Antichrist was brought into existence again after Damien's death. So in the movie, we have this baby Alexander York, who apparently he is Delia's twin, and he was inside Delia's body as an embryo, and he was extracted by this doctor and implanted into Karen, and she gave birth to him. And some things that are said throughout the movie imply that Alexander York, when he grows, that he will be Damien Thorne himself reincarnated, that he will maybe regain his own memories, and that he will be the same person. While in this story, we have a new Antichrist character who is, yeah, he is Damien's son, and he is also named Damien, but he is a new person, and he is by all means inferior to his father. He is, while reading the story, you can
He is evil
clearly
incarnate.
yeah, he is evil, but he is not nearly as cool as Damien was. He is, by all means, inferior to him, and even he himself says something like, Father, I am not worthy of you, or something like that. I don't remember exactly, but definitely he is not
So
nearly.
he definitely has some daddy issues.
Yeah, and for example, there is a scene where
Father, I pale compared to you.
yeah, he definitely does pale compared to the original Damien. One thing that I really disliked about this new Antichrist character is that in Omen 3, the final conflict, yeah, Damien kills people, but whenever he kills someone, he does it in self-defense, he does it for his own survival. While this new Antichrist, he kills some people he didn't have to kill at all. Like, there is some female journalist who approaches the guy and she wants to get to know him. She is really friendly. She doesn't know who he is, and she isn't trying to hurt him. And he kills her just because he knows that his father got killed by a woman, and that was his justification for killing this completely innocent woman. So while I kind of felt bad when the original Damien was killed, I didn't feel bad for this character when he got what he deserved in the end.
It
But
definitely does feel like you remember these books better than you do the first few. Eh?
well, possibly. I don't remember every single detail of them, but there are some things that I do remember. One thing that I did find pretty intriguing about Omen 4 Armageddon 2000, the book sequel, is there is this scene when we see the new Antichrist in some chamber where he keeps his father's embalmed corpse, like Davian's body was turned into a mummy or something like that, and he still keeps it in his house. That was a bit chilling and fairly
a bit necromantic.
a bit, yeah, that was a pretty cool detail, but I felt they kind of ruined it by the end because at the end of the book, someone destroys Davian's corpse, and it turns out that he had the skull of a jackal, which it was a reference to his mother being a jackal and so on, but I thought that was a bit over the top and unrealistic because a skull shapes, the skull influences the form of our head. And it was said in the third book that Davian Thorn was a very attractive man. And if he had the skull of a jackal, then he would have looked like a monster throughout the entire story. So, in my opinion, that didn't make sense.
There were some supernatural things that people seemed to think were seemed to go with the story at the time, probably. And to be honest, I think actually that that connection to his mother is actually kind of cool, at least in my mind.
Well, in a way it is, but maybe I would have preferred if they had done some other kind of reference. I don't know.
Oh, you mean like if they would have mentioned the shape of his forehead being protruding or something like that, even though he was charmingly handsome or something like that, you know?
Well, in the second movie and book, Damien Owen too, it was said that Damien had the DNA structure of a jackal, which that made much more sense to me than this. But okay, don't get me wrong. While I did have some issues with the books, they were still very interesting to read. They were enjoyable and they were suspenseful. So those of you who want to read them, yeah, you definitely should. You will have a good time reading them. But yeah, like I said, I think there were some plot points that I think made more sense in the movie than they did in the books.
Alrighty. So, what did you think about the music involved in this film? Was it fairly similar to some of the previous films? I thought that it was definitely fairly similar because they definitely used that Ave Santos or whatever.
Yeah. Well, one thing about this movie is that in the first three movies, the music is similar among all the three of them, but it's different because every time Jerry Goldsmith made new music. He was using the same lyrics through and through, but he was making new music for each movie. And for the fourth movie, he didn't. They mixed what they already had from the first and the third movie to put together the soundtrack of the fourth one. So,
well, what I thought was interesting is that there were some people that were singing along with the Aves, the opera part of the song.
Yeah, when this guy Earl Knight has his hallucination shortly before he dies, he sees these carolers who are singing Christmas carols. He suddenly sees them in some zombie form, and instead of Christmas carols, they are singing Gave Satani. That was a pretty cool scene, actually.
What I do want to say is that Michael Lerner has shown up in many films, including Barton Fink, Godzilla from 1998. He played Mayor Ebert. He played in the movie Elf as Fulton. He played a Senator Brickman in X-Men Days of Future Past. These are just some of the... he was also the voice of Mayor Ebert in Godzilla, the TV series from 1998. The 1990s television series, the animated one. But he was in the Rockford Files at one point in time. He was in a movie called Borderline. He was in the movie The Postman Always Rings Twice. And so on and so forth. Class Reunion. Anguish. He was in the 1988 series, The Equalizer, in one episode. He was in 8 Men Out, which was a baseball movie. He was in Harlem Nights. He was in Maniac Cop 2 as Edward Doyle. Plus he was Weasel in Newsies. So, which was a musical about street newspaper boys. He was also Goodlow Bender in The Road to Wellville, which was another film that had what's his name? Matthew Broderick in it. But I'm not entirely a fan of Matthew Broderick. I think he can be... I think Ferris Bueller's Day Off was like his best film. And I didn't mind him in Lady Hawk, but other than that, I just wasn't an entire fan of him. He was just Matthew Broderick throughout the whole thing. I mean, I have several actors that I feel the same way about. So Val Kilmer is another one of those. And who else? Anyways, moving on. What did you think about the production of this film? I thought it was relatively decent for its time.
Yeah, I think it was decent too. It had some pretty good movies, with some pretty good moments. As I said, for example, this hallucination when Earl Knight sees everything in this zombie form before he dies, that was one of the coolest scenes, in my opinion. It was pretty decent.
So I guess before we go into our favorite scenes, I guess there are some goofs. During the snake bites sequence, at first, actual rattlesnakes are shown in the tank, but the harmless gopher snakes are substituted for the venomous rattlers. You can tell the differences. The rattlesnakes have diamond-shaped coloring, large triangular heads, and rattles at the ends of their tails. The gopher snakes have squared off or broken line coloring, slender heads, and no rattles on their tails. As a radio broadcast reports that Gene York is expected to win the congressional seat for the 14th district, the sign on the wall of the polling place indicates that he is voting in the 18th district. Near the end, when Karen arrives at the house, the cameraman is reflected in the car's side of the window. There are no references whatsoever to the Second Coming, which happened in 1982 in this story. When Mother and the last sitter in the fight toward the end and the gun goes off, there is no blood to be seen on the dead body.
I will want to say something about the second coming when you finish this. Let's not forget it.
I just have one more here. When Delia is thrown off the horse and knocked unconscious, her mother reaches over to stroke her hair. Delia visibly flinches.
Phew, interesting. I must admit I didn't notice any of these goofs, but uh, what you mentioned about the second coming reminded me of something else I wanted to mention about the books. So, as I mentioned in our previous discussion, in the final conflict, throughout the story, it's implied that Jesus came back to earth as a child, but at the end of the story, in the movie, it turns out that he didn't come back as a child, but as an adult, but in some spiritual form or something like that. While in the book it said that hello, are you still here?
Yep.
Oh, okay. In the book, it said that he really did come back to Earth as a child. Well, he was reborn as a child, and as it was said, his birth wasn't registered because he was born in some gypsy tribe or something like that. And in the fourth and the fifth book, it's mentioned that that child does exist somewhere, but we don't get to know much about what he does. Like some time passes between the end of the final conflict and the beginning of these books. Armageddon 2000 and the Abomination. In these stories, the new Antichrist is 17 years old, if I remember correctly. So supposedly, the reincarnated Jesus should also be 17 or 18. And at the end of the fifth book, the Antichrist gets stabbed with all the seven daggers at once and he gets killed. But we don't get to hear a single word about what happened with the Christ child after that, which is actually one of my main issues with how the story goes in the books. Like, it's implied that the child does exist, but what happened with him after the Antichrist was killed? Did he stay on Earth and die as a mortal human, or did he disappear and go back to heaven, or will the end of the world still happen while he is still on Earth? We don't get to know anything about that. And that's what I personally think is one of the biggest plot holes in the books. Well, again, don't get me wrong. Like I said, many Omen fans say that these two books make a much better sequel to the final conflict than this. And I personally would say, well, they maybe do have more of an Omen atmosphere, and that's what probably makes them more enjoyable to many people. They are not quite perfect. The movie may have its flaws, but so do the books. And I think if you want to explore the Omen franchise properly, you should both watch the movie and read the books. The books take the story to a whole different direction. They are definitely worth reading, but yeah, I definitely think the movie doesn't deserve to be called so much worse than the books. Although it's a
neither,
whole
neither
different
do I.
story.
So, what is a favorite scene that you could take from this particular film?
Ooh, interesting question. I think it would be the confrontation with the doctor when we get to hear the whole story and find out how this story actually connects to the previous Omen movies. and it was rather interesting to see how things were happening in the background throughout the whole movie. And unless you have seen the movie before, you wouldn't notice it. Like when Delia falls off the horse, the doctor takes the baby Alexander out of her body, and later on, when Karen is hospitalized, he puts the baby inside her uh, for her to carry the pregnancy out and give birth to the boy. So, in this confrontation scene, we hear how some things were happening throughout the whole story, and when you're watching it for the second time, you can see it more clearly,
Well,
which
yeah,
is
one of the best quotes in there is, "You made me a surrogate for Delia's brother, you son of a bitch."
yeah. And one thing I liked about this story is that if you listen to some things that were said, the doctor says something like, Damien is everything, and he says Jean will help us usher the new king in. It kind of implies that the baby Alexander, when he grows, that he will actually be the same old Damien, and that maybe he will even regain his old memories, as the priest says beforehand that the Antichrist will be a very clever deceiver, which is what Damien was in the third movie. So all these things kind of imply, as I said, that this baby really will be Damien himself, unlike the Antichrist in the books, which is a new person and very inferior to the original Damien. I I would have by far preferred the books if the new Damien was actually a reincarnation of the original one instead of being his son and a new person altogether. I think that would have made the books much better. Well, to me at least.
Ah, well, I would have to say that my favorite scene is probably the part where the father of the bully was going to go and do something to Delia, and when he turned around, he wasn't looking when his head was lopped off.
Yeah, that was kind of a nod to the photographer in the first movie who got killed in a similar way.
Yes, and I guess I like the snake pit part as well. For some reason, those snakes definitely looked real. I didn't really look too closely at the snakes, and I don't think you're really supposed to look too closely at the snakes either.
Yeah,
But I enjoyed that part because all of a sudden, her faith, uh, 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 she was standing in the pit and she was shouting about having faith in order not to be bit by evil or whatever, and suddenly she was shown these photos and she lost her faith, and that's why the snakes bit her because they sensed something was wrong. They sensed something was off, and to me
yeah.
that was a kind of a cool thing, even though it was a bad thing that happened to her.
Yeah.
She didn't deserve the death that she got, I don't think, but because it seemed like she was actually doing some good, even though these people may have been believing the bad, believing the con that she was that she was pulling. But I don't know. I know that there are those kind of revivalists out there where people believe that they can be healed. This woman is got the hand of God. Come forward. I have seen the angel. I have seen the angel of the Lord. Come down. Come, be healed. Give me $10,000 and I will heal you forever.
Indeed.
But in any case, I think. Did you have anything else to add to this film, or?
Mm, I'm not sure. Well, I could maybe ramble about some connections I saw between this movie and the first one, like similarities and differences and so on, but that would just be me rambling. Maybe we should let the audience do that for themselves if they watch the entire series, like we have done so far.
Definitely. I mean, let us know down in the comments what you thought of our ramblings so far, ladies and gentlemen, and hopefully you found us insightful or at least inspiring. So that maybe you can take a look at this film a little differently and word it differently. Who knows? But we're definitely not done with this Omen series, because we have definitely some other films that are related to the series, if not interrelated. And definitely check us out next week, as we'll let you know what's in store for you. It's going to be a surprise. So thank
Ooh.
you, ladies and gentlemen. Have a great day, evening, or morning, wherever you are. Let us know, like I said, down in the comments what you thought. And like, share, and subscribe, and enjoy.
Enjoy.